Guys, welcome back. I'm MeiLani Hock, and this is Why Not Me B&B. We are going to go through the 3 different types of Airbnb hosting. Now, when I say Airbnb, we're going to talk about that in a second. But just a reminder before we dive in that your success is completely up to you, all right? It's your job to do your research. It's your job to research your area. But just a reminder, it's up to you. But I promise that if you follow the systems, you will be a B&B superhost or superhero, whatever you want to say. We'll talk about superhosts later. To be honest, I'm not always a superhost, and that's okay. But we'll talk about that a little later, so stay tuned. Now, on our path to B&B greatness, superhero-dom, if you will, we are going to start with evaluating, pricing, and projecting. But there's a little part before that before we get too into even step 1, you've really got to know and understand the basics of 3 different types of hosting, okay? Now, when I say Airbnb, I mean any short-term rental, okay? It's kind of like a tissue or a chapstick, all right? When I say Airbnb, no matter what platform you're on for short-term rental hosting, HomeAway, VRBO, whatever it is, when I say Airbnb, just know that I mean a short-term rental, okay? Because for different properties, you're going to be on different platforms. Now, you might ask, well, how do I know which platform to be on? And before we get started, here's a good place to insert this in. It depends on your location. It depends on the size of your property. It depends on how far open you want your calendar to be, how far in advance you want it to be open. It depends on your target market. Now, with each of those, let's talk about them. Let's talk about your location. If you are in a destination vacation area, then you might want to look into not just Airbnb, but look at the other platforms as well. If your size of house is like a 2 to 3 bedroom townhome, usually I'll probably start to point you towards the Airbnb direction. But it always depends on your location and the size of house. For me, I don't like to leave my calendar. Usually on most properties, I only like to leave my calendar about 3 months in advance open. So that makes me think I'm more of an Airbnb property. Because with a VRBO HomeAway type of home, you usually need to plan those a year or 2 in advance. You need to keep your calendar open for that long. So if you want to book a corporate retreat or if you want to book a family reunion, most of the time you're going to go towards a VRBO or a HomeAway because Airbnb guests, most often they book between 14 and 45 days in advance. Whereas with HomeAway, VRBO, they are planning further ahead, looking in their calendar further ahead, okay? So just keep that in mind, all right? Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly, but just make sure that you're researching which platform to be on. And then also, my goal with each of my clients is to get them in once, and then have them come back as a returning customer directly through my site. Then they're not paying Airbnb fees, they're not paying VRBO fees, nothing like that. They get a cheaper rate. They book directly with me, so I'm not against my competition. So some ways that you can do that is by making sure that in each of your houses you have a business card, a flyer. Come back and see us. We'll give you a 10% discount or something like that. If you want to throw a discount, you don't have to. But enjoyed your stay, come back and we'll get you on our calendar again. Also, I send them an email. After they check out, they are added to our email list. So we say, thanks so much for coming. We really enjoyed having you with us. Next time you come directly to us. We'll see if we can work out a deal with you, okay? That way you're getting them away from all of the other competitors, and they're coming straight back to you. But they don't even know that's an option. You have to make sure that they know that. And once they're on their mailing list, you're going to add a drip campaign so that you are constantly reaching out to them. We send out a quarterly newsletter saying, this is what's happening in that area that you stayed in. Don't you want to come back? To make it sound so enticing to come back to us. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little later as well, about getting your own website up and running. Now, if you're in this class, I assume you don't need to know a lot of details of how amazing Airbnb is in the industry. But looking at this right here, we've got Hilton, which was founded in 1919, and they have 5,300 hotels as of 2018. Wyndham has 8,092 hotels in 2018, and then Marriott has 5,700 hotels in 2018. Now, Airbnb, as of 2018, had 4 million listings. Now I know that that's not broken down by room, but just to give an idea of how big Airbnb is. If you're in this class, you know that Airbnb is taking over the hospitality world. It is the future of real estate investing. I say that it is the easiest way to get into real estate investing and building your portfolio. I had somebody come up to me the other day being like, I know that I'm either going to get into Airbnb or wholesaling. I just don't know which one. Well, let me talk about that real quick, because as a real estate investor, I've done wholesaling. I've done rehabbing. And when I was a wholesaler, I did like the big checks, but I got the big check and then I'd have to go looking for another one. It was like payday over. And sometimes those deals would take me months, 6 months, 3 months, whatever. I'd send out direct mail campaigns and hope that somebody actually responded. But with Airbnb and the way we're going to teach you, you actually are going to people that are asking. They are saying, my home is for rent. Come, rent it. They're asking you. They are doing a direct mail campaign practically to me. And I go and say, I want that offer. I want to take you up on that offer. I want to rent your home. And then from that, you are able to establish a relationship that not only does a one-time payment, but establishes a recurring stream of income, you guys. We are smart real estate investors. We need to get into something that's providing that recurring stream of income. When I was doing flipping houses, rehabbing houses, whatever you call it, I'd work really hard, 6 months, 9 months for that big paycheck and pray that I got the listing price, that my ARV that I had planned on. This is so different. You're gonna set up a recurring stream of income, so I know roughly what I'm going to be making next month, the month after that, the month after that, depending on how long I want to keep these contracts. Now, if you're lost, let's dive into this, okay? And then it'll all start to piece together. So there's 3 different types of Airbnb hosting: ownership, arbitrage, and co-hosting. Now, when to do ownership is a little bit, might be different than some other people's opinions, okay? If you already have a place, let's say you have a house that has a basement and you want to start renting it out. Awesome. Give it a try. Check to see if your HOA allows it, and then give it a shot. Okay? Maybe it's a guest house. Maybe it's a carriage house. Maybe you have a traditional rental property that right now is rented out on an annual basis, and you want to test it. In fact, that's one of the ways I got started, is when we were building up our real estate portfolio. You know, it was like every third rehab by a rental property. So with one of these rental properties that we had gotten, we decided, hey, let's test this out as an Airbnb and see how it does. And we found that we were making 2 to 4 times as much as a short-term rental than we were as a long-term rental. So instead, we changed them over to short-term rentals, and any that weren't in good Airbnb locations, we sold them off and went and bought Airbnbs so that we could increase that passive income, okay? So if you have a traditional rental property, you might want to think about turning it into an Airbnb. You might want to get that address handy, so as we go through these modules, that you'll use that as your property to analyze, okay? Maybe you have a favorite destination. Your family loves to go to Cuba Island or something like that, and you really want a property there, but you're an investor, so you know, okay, I need to make up an excuse to not just pour some money into it, but you want to still have an income with it. So maybe it's that, okay? Those are good ways to do the ownership model. Also, if you've ever done an Airbnb in the neighborhood and you're like, I know that it works here, I know that I've proven my method, then I recommend that you can go ahead and do an ownership model, okay? Once you've tested the going rate, the occupancy, once you've tested the, don't taste your neighbors, just test your neighbors to make sure that they are not gonna, I've had some neighbors that will call the city every single day until we stop our Airbnb business there. That's why I push you towards the non-ownership model, okay? These that we've talked about, these are good ideas to do the ownership model. However, I really strongly recommend that you start with using other people's properties, which we're gonna talk about in just a second. Unless you have one of those situations that we talked about. You already have the space or something like that, okay? So here's our first case study, all right? We're gonna talk about a traditional rental that we turned into a B&B, okay? This was an old home plus a garage, okay? So a detached garage with an apartment above it. It was just a studio apartment. And with this property, it was a terrible property, you guys. It was like terrible. The foundation was falling apart, but we bought it because we knew that it was gonna be a good commercial investment down the road. So we bought it for the acreage and for the commercial buyout that we knew was going to happen down the way. So we purchased the home for $320,000 in April of 2016 and decided we were getting about $1,400 to $1,600 per month in rent. Now, when I say we, I use these examples a lot because I can. This is actually my parents, my best students, my most frequent callers as well. So my parents are in their mid-70s, and they have lived in Africa for the last 7 of 9 years. And they used to flip houses in Newport Beach, California in 2008, 2009. You can imagine what happened there. They made millions, they lost millions, and they got home from Africa after doing great missionary work and decided, what are we going to do with our life? We're in our mid-70s. We love real estate. My dad loves fixing things. He's a general contractor by design, by profession. And my mom loves designing things. She loves decorating things. But they knew they didn't want to get back into real estate and flipping. I took my mom to a real estate investing conference that was talking all about flipping houses, and she got so nauseous, she had her ambition hangover, came back, and she felt like she was going to be throwing up. And so she had to go out into the lobby for the rest of the event. But they knew they still wanted to be in real estate. And so they were looking around, and right under their nose was their daughter, and they said, hey, you've got a lot of those Airbnbs. Should we do that? I said, flip, yes, you should do that. So this property that I had helped them buy a few years back, we said, let's start with this one. So in May 2019, we converted it to an Airbnb, and we decided to turn it into 4 different streams of income, okay? Now, the first was the house, the main house. And you guys, again, this was a terrible house. It was a terrible house. But all we had to do to make it charming, we'll say, cozy, charming, you know those marketing words we real estate investors put on it, is to embrace that southern charm and coziness. I told them they had to paint the trim of throughout the house, not even a whole paint job. They had to paint the bathroom cabinets. They had to change out the linoleum because it was bad in both bathrooms, and so we put in luxury vinyl tile. And then we also had to, the toilet was kind of like sinking through the floor, so we had to fix that. Other than that, we were like, this is good enough. Like, it's cozy, we'll embrace the cozy, okay? We also had to clean the windows that I don't think had been cleaned for about 50 years. And that took a long time. But then once we converted it over, just the main house, okay? The first month, which was actually just half of a month, made $1,469. $1,469, and if you'll remember, that's how much it was making as a long-term rental. And now in June, with just half a month, they were already making what they had made with a long-term renter, okay? Then came along July. Full month, they got $2,810, okay? This was just the main house. We still hadn't done the 3 other streams of income, okay? August, we released the upstairs apartment, which also had, it didn't have a shower. It had a bathroom, it had a half bath, but we added a shower for less than $2,000 and converted it to a studio. We put a microwave in there, a hot plate, a mini fridge. Voila, you have a studio apartment. And that one, so in August, they were making $5,134. And then in September, when the slide was made, it wasn't even done with the whole month yet. And it was at $3,000, over $3,000. Now, the updated slide is average monthly. Before, as a traditional rental, they were making about $1,500 a month. Now they are averaging $4,500 per month on this one property. And they haven't even done the 4th stream of income. Just to walk you through that, if you're interested, the main house was 1 stream of income. The studio apartment was 1 stream of income. The garage, they run out for storage space. And 4th is the pasture in the backyard, because there's 3 acres. That one we haven't leveraged because we got the commercial offer that we wanted. And so we're trying to wait to see if we want to keep the property or not. But yeah, so definitely a great example of ownership turning a rental into a short-term rental and how much more you can get from that opportunity. All right, now let's dive into using other people's property. In real estate investing, we always talk about using other people's money. Well, in short-term rental hosting or Airbnb hosting, see, it's so much easier to say Airbnb hosting. In Airbnb hosting, we talk about using other people's properties. Now, there's 2 different kinds of using other people's property. There's arbitrage or co-hosting. Now, co-hosting can either be called co-hosting or short-term property management, okay? I will go back and use those interchangeably, co-hosting or short-term property management, okay? Let's go through each of them, okay? So why you would use other people's property in general is because you're not gonna need that big down payment. You're not gonna need, let's say you wanna open a new one every month, you're not gonna need that 25% down on each different investment, okay? So you can scale a lot faster. Also, how awesome it is that if you start using other people's property, you go to a landlord and you get to test a property out to see if it works for you, and you get to test the location, you get to test the neighbors, see if it's going to have the occupancy rates that you thought, make as much money as you thought it was going to make. You get to test all of those things. You guys, how cool would it be if you got to do that in rehabbing? Oh, I'll rehab it and let's see what the market goes, and then I'll see if I really want to deal the deal. Oh my goodness, you guys, you get to do that when you are using other people's property in Airbnb hosting. What if you got to do that on your personal home? And you got to, I know there are some people who do, lease options or subject to or something like that to do creative. But with this, what if you got to do that on your personal home? Let me test it for you. Let me see if the air conditioning works. Let me see if there's any weird noises. Let me see if there's any weird neighbors. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing here. You're using other people's properties, and then at the end, once maybe that person wants to sell their house or you approach them, once you've proven that it's a good model, then you offer to buy the house. You've tested it. Now you're ready to marry it. Okay? You've dated it. Now you're ready to marry it. You've tested it. Now you're ready to commit to it. Okay? How awesome is that? As we talked about in my story, my why was with my ambition hangover, that I'm trying to just decide if I should tell this story now, and I'm just going to tell it. You know how I was talking about my ambition hangover and how my husband had to come and pick me up off of the closet floor a number of times? Well, it was December around this time when we were leveraged $5 million. And one of my lenders, who had lent more than $500,000, I want to say, was using their family's, their deceased husband or father's 9/11 memorial fund. And I was having nightmares of this family. I was having nightmares about this family that I was going to lose their money for them. And we were leveraged $5 million, so there were other families, there were other hardworking investors. I didn't use hard money lenders, I used private lenders that I found, that I worked hard to find. And I wanted to be the person, I wanted to be able to fulfill all those promises. But when there were drive-by shootings on our properties, or when we had lawsuits that made us have to shut down projects, 6 projects during one of our lawsuits for 6 months, and I had the holding costs for each of those properties, you guys, I had that ambition hangover and I was throwing up in my toilet because I was so sick and nauseous about how much I had leveraged, how much risk I had put our family that I could see that family's face of using their 9/11 memorial fund with me, and that pressure that I felt like I was under. Well, this was in December, you guys. This was in December when I was leveraged. I was nauseous all the time. I was crying a lot. And I had built up the dream that I wanted. On those dates that we had talked about, I had wanted to build this great investment company, but I had burnout. I had rehabbing burnout, and I was getting so tired and so worried about these funds and the market taking a dip like it had for my parents in 2008, 2009, and they had lost millions. And I was so worried that I was going to lose millions of other people's money and my own. And it was December, and my oldest, who knows and understands the magic of Christmas, I had asked him, so I haven't seen a letter to Santa. What is it that you want for Christmas? And my sweet son looked down at his feet as we were walking to the bus stop, and he said, Mom, I just want one thing. I just want you to be able to sell one of your houses. Because of the lawsuits we were in, because of different things going on, we had, I think at this time, 11 or 12 properties sitting that we were not allowed to sell. And it was making me nauseous. And we had just been able to start working with them again, and things were rolling again. And he said, I just want you to sell one house, Mom. Oh, you guys, my heart sank as a mother. And I looked at him and I said, well, have a good day. And sent him off to school. And I prayed and we fasted as a family. Please let us sell just one house. If it's possible, we'd sure like to sell all of them. But at this point, I just wanted to sell one. Well, on Christmas Eve, we have a family tradition that we always play football. Like I said, I had 5 kids. My husband and I, we met playing basketball. We love sports. So on Christmas Eve, we play football. And we were playing football together as a family when I got a text and I started crying. And my oldest son came over to me and he said, Mom, is it? And then said the name of my contractor. Apparently I had cursed his name a little bit too much, and he knew that often when I start crying, he was ready to take him on. Like, I got him, Mom. Is it him? I'm going to take care of you. And I said, no, honey, you got your Christmas gift. It's a Christmas miracle. And my big son jumped into my arm and he started crying as we celebrated that we had sold one of those houses. And as I thought about that feeling of how sick I had felt for the last few months as we were going through our rehabbing trials, I thought, this is not my turf. Flipping houses isn't my turf right now. I cannot stand to be leveraged that much money, especially not knowing what is going to happen in the market, not knowing what's going to happen, who's president, who's going to choose there's just so many unknowns. And so in that moment, as I was hugging my son and my other kids came over to find out, and we were hugging as a family and celebrating our Christmas miracle, I thought, and I promised to myself, I've got to find a better way. I've got to find a better way to provide that time and that passive income. And now I added without leveraging my family and my family's income. And so as I get into talking about other people's property, I hope it's okay that I get a little passionate, because I have been in real estate investing. I've done all the things that I keep on listing, you guys. But this is such a great way to get into real estate investing with low risk. Okay, with low startup costs. It's a great way to get in, build your portfolio, so then you can start doing the other things if you want, or you can build an Airbnb business. Like we talked about, Airbnb, sometimes I go to these conferences and somebody is talking about wholesaling, or somebody is talking about rehabbing, or they're all talking about their different things, and they'll be like, okay, here's a course, go take it, good luck. I mean, that's what's, Robert Kiyosaki's been teaching us how to do it for 30 years. That's not Airbnb, guys. That's not Airbnb. In fact, this is a baby in the industry. So if you want to be a part of the future of real estate investing, this is the place to be. This is the future of real estate investing. And how awesome that you're sitting here and you're learning about it now. So sorry, I digress. Let's get back into it. But thank you I kind of geek out a little bit on using on this model, because I get so passionate about it, and I hope you can understand why, and I hope that's okay that I shared that. Okay, so another reason why to use other people's property is because when an air conditioning goes out, y'all, I don't have to pay for that. In fact, I call my landlord and I say, hey, there's a leak in the roof. There's a air conditioning issue. And they say, oh, we'll send someone right over. And I don't have to pay for it. It's so fabulous. So yeah, just like when you're dating, you get to date somebody before you marry it. You get to test it before you commit to it. Okay? Awesome. So now let's dive in a little deeper. Okay? Using other people's properties. You have this house. You have Mr. Landlord who wants to put his house up for rent. Like I talked about before, he actually advertises it. He's going to put it on MLS. He's going to put it on Zillow. He is advertising, please, someone rent my house. All you have to do is you go over and you approach Mr. Landlord. Now, this doesn't quite look like me, so let's change that. This is me. This is me with the gaggle of children coming to Mr. Landlord and saying, I want to rent your house. And you are going to explain to it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you're going to pitch him on, I am going to keep your house so clean. In fact, I'm going to have it professionally cleaned multiple times a week or month, and I'm going to keep it at a 5-star status because I get reviewed every single week on how I'm doing and how well I'm keeping your property, and that determines my income. I'm going to sign your regular contract, whatever contract you want. I just have to attach an addendum to it. Okay, so no matter which way you're using other people's property, this is the same basic pitch, okay? You're gonna go through these basic 3 items. And we're actually going to talk about a lot more that you're going to go through. But that's kind of the basic intro for either arbitrage or co-hosting. Now let's dig deeper into just arbitrage right now, okay? Arbitrage, the actual definition is the simultaneous renting, buying, and selling of a property to take advantage of differing prices for the same asset, okay? Now, so let's go back to our example. With arbitrage, what you're going to do is you're going to sign a regular lease, their contract even if they want. You just got to make sure you do an addendum, okay? The addendum is so critically important to make sure that you're protected, okay? So you sign a 6 to 12 month lease and you say, Mr. Landlord, I'm going to pay you the same rent every single month, just like you advertised that you liked. And you're going to go through those things again. And I'm going to leave it clean, have it clean, professionally cleaned multiple times a week or a month. I'm going to leave it at 5-star I'm going to make sure that it's always a 5-star status. I'm going to use your contract. So you're going through all those things. You sign a regular lease, 6 to 12 months, you pay the exact same amount every single month. You usually pay for the utilities. You usually pay for the furnishings. Now, both of those things can be negotiated, okay? But the typical arbitrage model is that you pay for the utilities, you pay for the furnishings, and then you're committed for the term of the lease, okay? Now, co-hosting is a little bit different, okay? You're still gonna say those first three, you know, the pitch is still the same. However, if you find that, this is how I run my co-hosting or my short-term property management business, is that I make them commit to at least 6 months, okay? You can pitch it in two ways, that you are building an asset for them or you're testing it out for them. Okay, it's very similar, but there's different technicalities to both of those, okay? When I build an asset for someone, I am creating their account for them. I use their name, their profile picture, so if and when they ever want to take that property back, they have 200 5-star reviews or whatever it is, so that you've built up a following, you've built up a review for them so that they have that asset. You've built up a short-term rental asset for them if they ever want to take back the work of running and managing that on their own. Okay, sometimes they might. I've never had anybody do that because they like getting their money. They like how it's coming in. They really don't want to be involved, but maybe in their head they think maybe someday I will want to do that, okay? Now, with this model, the utilities, they pay for. The furnishings, usually I have them pay for them. Now again, this can be negotiated. One of the tactics is if you pay for your furnishings, if you pay for the furnishings in their house, likelihood is they are going to be a long-term customer, because if you've built up an asset for them using your furniture, you can always say, yeah, let me know if you want to take it back over. Either they're going to have to buy your furniture from you, or they're going to have to put all new furniture in, which they don't want to do. They don't want to take new pictures. They don't want to have to all of that. So if you have the money and you're interested in that model, that might work. But with co-hosting, the reason why I say that furnishings usually is passed off to them, because co-hosting is a great way to get into the business with low startup costs. And one of the way to do that is to pass the cost of the furnishings onto them. But if you want to ensure keeping the client longer, then you're going to want to pay for the furniture yourself, because it gets them to stick with you a little bit longer. I hope that makes sense. So just going through the basics. So arbitrage model, you're going to need to be paying for your security deposit, your first and last month's rent, the furnishings, the utilities. You're going to keep your furnishings. So let's say that this property doesn't work out. You're just going to take those furnishings and put it into the next property that you have, okay? Also, it's a lot easier bookkeeping. So you're just sending a bill pay every single month, the exact same amount, okay? Also, something to be aware of is with the arbitrage model, you don't have as much power if the HOA changes their mind and says, never mind, we don't want short-term rentals here, or if the city comes up with a new policy. It's a little bit harder since you don't own the property, usually my landlords don't want to get as legally involved as if they were a co-host. So there's that trade-off as well. Also with arbitrage model, you have more control, and I'll talk about that in just a second when we get to the bottom of co-hosting. So with co-hosting, there can be zero startup costs. If you pass the cost of the furnishings onto them, they pay the rent, they pay the furnishings, they pay the utilities, the snow shovel, the lawn maintenance, all of that is on them. okay? Now, I don't move in by myself, so I have my moving team that helps me, so I put in that $500 to help pay my moving team and maybe my professional photographer as well. Now, the monthly bookkeeping is a little bit harder because what you're going to have to do is each month you have to do an analysis. Now, let's talk about that for just a minute. With the co-hosting property management model, with a regular long-term property management company, depending on your area, that's going to be anywhere from 8 to 12%, I would say is the average in the US. But with co-hosting, you can go anywhere from 10%, I've seen as high as 50% split. So most of the time I do a 20 or a 25% split that I get, and then they get the rest. So when you're analyzing that, you just want to make sure that they're still making more than they would make as a regular rental, but it doesn't have to be a ton more. So when you run your numbers, you're going to be looking at that, okay? Now, that is a little more time intensive in your bookkeeping, but it's not terrible. Also, you're going to want to make sure actually with both of these that you have an out clause. I put a 90-day cancel notice with both type, just in case the city comes up with something, just in case the HOA comes up with something, just in case you don't like the landlord, to be honest. That's one of the things about dating it until you marry it, is you can create the addendum to be what you want. In ours, we have a 90-day out clause, okay? Now, I tell them, and sometimes you can even put this in the 90-day out clause, but you can't end it between November 1st and January 1st or something like that. So get creative with it, but make sure that you do have that out, because like we talked about, when I'm doing an arbitrage model or a co-hosting model, until you have a signed contract for longer than 3 months out, I like to just keep my calendar open for 3 months in advance, okay? Also, as a co-host, you get a lot of opinions from your landlords in co-hosting. They feel like they're in the business. They're like, how we doing this month? So like halfway through the month, they'll be like, how we doing this month? At the end of the month, how we doing this month? Oh, I think we should, I have one landlord who I love, and they're professors 6 months of the year. They're in the US, 6 months they're out. So when they're not here, I manage their property as a short-term rental. And she at the beginning was like, okay, I think we should up it to a 21-day minimum. And I'm like, ugh, like how am I, like that doesn't work with my model at all. Like for some properties maybe, but that's not the location we had chosen. Oh, well, how about we do 14 days? Okay, now let's test 3 days. And every 3 days she wanted to try something new. So just a heads up, with co-hosting, they're going to want to be a little bit more involved because they're a percentage. So they want to make sure that you're doing it right. Okay. Now, everyone is going to ask me, which one is better? I want to know which one is better. Sorry, guys. Well, my answer is it depends on your location. It depends on your phase of life. If you're just getting in the business and you don't have much money to get investing, well, then let's try co-hosting. You can be as low as a 0 startup cost, literally. That is how small it can be, okay? But arbitrage, I usually make more money doing, but co-hosting, you can scale faster as well. So there's pros and cons to both. It depends on your location, depends on your phase of life, but I want you to know about both so that you're open and ready to it, and that you are set up with the proper systems in place to run both of them. Now, let's talk about a different case study. So this is one that we had acquired, and we were renting and we were arbitraging it for $10.50 per month. Okay, now some of you in like Boston and California are like, ugh, I can't even get a cardboard box for that amount. But in this area, it was a great find, and it was $10.50 per month right next to a university. So we're going to talk about this a little later, but I don't target vacation destinations. I target airports, I target hospitals, and I target universities. Okay, so this was within a mile of a university and a hospital, and so I knew I wanted it. It had 2 of my big boxes checked, and it was only a half hour away from the airport. So we rented it for $10.50 per month, and we were netting about $8.50 per month. Now you'll hear me say, depending on what size of house you're looking at, and if you're going for townhomes or if you're going luxury level, this is going to change. But a good entry point for me and our goals was to aim for about $1,000 net per property per month. Okay, $1,000 net per property per month. Again, that's going to change where you are, but I would say if you're not making that much, then it's not as worth it. It's not worth it. Okay, but each of you have your own goals. Maybe you're fine with just $700 a month. Maybe you're fine with $850 per month. Well, we had seen that this property booked so fast and was so fully booked. In fact, we were at 95% occupancy rate at this one, and I was like, oh heck no, because I never want to be above an 85% occupancy rate. Now, people are going to tell you other opinions, but in my opinion, I want to be top dollar. I want to be the top of the range. I want to be if I'm 95% booked, I'm not charging enough money. I'm leaving money on the table. Okay? So I aim for that 80 to 90% occupancy rate. Okay? So with this property, we had proven it was going to stay booked. We had proven that the neighbors were fine with it. We had proven everything. And so we offered to purchase the property after just 6 months. And it was an out-of-state landlord. Special note there, when you are looking for properties, a great way to target, especially if you miss your direct mail days. I actually do have inquired in the early days. I started doing direct mail because I was good at it. I had done it for wholesaling. I had done it for rehabbing. I was like, well, I know I want a property. I want to do a rental in this area, but you're not up against all those other wholesaling offers. You are saying, I want to build an asset for you. I want to establish a long-term relationship. Anybody who's putting their house on the market has been taught, decades and decades of must build rental portfolio, must get renter in there. And so if you're saying, I want to be your renter until you're ready to sell it, and then when you sell it, I want to buy it, landlords love that, right? I mean, how great is that? If you're a landlord, you know what I'm talking about. That you're going to keep it clean because you want to buy it as soon as they're ready to sell it. So you know that I'm going to take good care of it. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, so this was a landlord in California. So, for the direct mail, sometimes we target out-of-state landlords, knowing that there's a higher likelihood that they might want to sell it down the road. So we offered to buy it, and then now we're making $1,400 plus per month. Sometimes we make $2,400 a month on this property. So it varies, okay? But that's just an example of once I dated my property, I was ready to marry it. Once I tested it, I was ready to commit, okay? And start growing our rental portfolio. But I had the access from building it on through the arbitrage model, okay? Now, who thinks that they can do this? Do you think you can do this? Who thinks that they can get in and open their first property within 30 days? You can be a superhero in this. You do not have to have huge leveraged amounts of money. You do not have to go out seeking private lenders. You don't have to do direct mail if you don't want to, okay? This is huge. The next thing is to match up Airbnb properties with Airbnb experiences and upsells, okay? So when you're thinking about no matter what model you want to do, start brainstorming different upsells you could do, okay? Maybe it's, like I said, I'm not in vacation destinations, but maybe you have a lake. Maybe you could offer fishing equipment. Maybe you could offer ATVs. Maybe you could offer bikes. Just by putting pictures of a bike in your Airbnb listing will increase the amount of people that book your property, okay? I'm amazed at how many people are like, oh, we're so excited your place has bikes. But then I go back and see my bikes like 6 months later and they have not moved. But people still book with your Airbnb. They're like, oh, it's fun. It has bikes, okay? So think of little upgrades and upsells. So I actually charge extra to use the bikes. People pay it. They rarely use it, but whatever works for them. Also, if you are a realtor and you have your realtor's license, you need to be aware that as soon as somebody says, oh, I'm coming to the area because we're thinking about moving to the area, poof, okay? You need to light up and automatically send a message of, hey, I'm actually in the real estate business. I don't take clients personally. However, can I set you up with 2 or 3 realtors and they can help show you around? Would you like names? What area are you looking for? Let me help, blah, 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 blah. And I don't care which of my 2 or 3 friends they choose, but I'm getting a referral fee out of it, okay? So 1 year, I made almost $30,000 just in referral fees. Just in referral fees. It's the only reason why I keep my license. Well, and the access to the MLS. But so think of those different ways. Now, one of my friends, they spent about $500,000. They bought a house in Orlando, Florida area, and they spent $250,000 upfitting it so that it could be a Star Wars galaxy. Okay, this house, each room is a different Star Wars planet. It's intense. They had like actual set designers come in and build out the rooms. And so I want you to Open your mind to what options are out there. And one of the upsells that they offer is that Darth Vader can pick you up from the airport in a limousine. How cool is that? Totally worth the money. You have some friend, you get the Darth Vader costume, and you create an upsell from it, okay? So be creative with it. No matter which of the 3 models you're using, look for ways that you can upsell, that you can add experiences, and Airbnb provides that platform so you don't even have to do your marketing. Airbnb does your marketing for you. It's such an amazing platform, and I'm totally geeking out, but just know that how do we do this? How do we become superheroes in the Airbnb life? It isn't the Force. We don't have the Force. My kids are cute. I love my kids, but we don't have the Force. But we do set up systems so that you can create a lifestyle that allows you time, that allows you passive income, and with not the crazy leveraged risk of $5 million or whatever that number is for you. So as we go through this, just know we've got a lot more to cover, but that was the basics of the 3 different types of Airbnb hosting. I'll see you in the next lesson.